Everybody's talking about AI like it's the biggest thing they've ever seen. For Gen X, it's probably the sixth or seventh time. Somehow, I think we've been here before. We've seen this movie before. Different actors, different technology, same story. We watched record stores disappear. We watched video stores disappear. We watched payphones disappear. And we watched film cameras disappear. We watched entire industries vanish and entirely new industries take their place. And every time somebody said the world was ending, it never did. The world just changed. I was born in 1968, which means I've had the front row seat of one of the biggest technological shifts in human history. We've spent our entire life adapting. The world changes, we adapt. Then it changes again, and we adapt again. And the other day, I saw something on Facebook Marketplace that reminded me of all of this. When I was a kid, if you wanted directions, you bought a map. If you wanted information, you went to the library. If you wanted money, you went to the bank. Not an ATM, the bank. If you wanted to call somebody, you found a payphone. If you wanted to hear a song, you turned on the radio and hoped they played it. None of those things felt temporary. We thought they would always be here. Everybody did. The payphone worked, the paper map worked, the film camera worked. The world just found a different way. That's the part younger people don't always understand. Most of these things didn't disappear because they failed. They disappeared because something new solved the problem better. And that's when I saw this machine. Somebody paid thousands of dollars for this machine. Today I found one on Facebook Marketplace for $30. $30. At first glance, it's just an old piece of technology. But I think it's something more. It's a reminder. This is the CD duplication tower. At one time, this machine sat in the middle of an entire business. Bands needed CDs, churches needed CDs, businesses needed CDs, everybody needed CDs. This machine solved the problem, and because it solved the problem, it had value. Then the problem disappeared. Streaming showed up, cloud storage showed up, file sharing showed up, and suddenly a machine that once made money was worth about the same as a large pizza. The machine isn't broken, the world just moved on. And if you're Gen X, you've watched that happen over and over again. Different actors, different technology, same story. Here's something people forget. Technology doesn't just destroy industries. Technology creates them first. Take music. Most people think the explosion of rock and roll happened because musicians got better. Technology had a lot to do with it. Magnetic tape changed everything. Multi-track recording changed everything. Recording equipment became cheaper and more available. Musicians could suddenly do things that previous generations couldn't imagine. Entire industries were built because technology changed. Then the technology changed again. Vinyl became cassette, cassette became CD, CD became MP3, and MP3 became streaming. And every time the format changed, people predicted disaster. The end of music, the end of quality, the end of the industry. But it wasn't the end. It was another chapter. Different actors, different technology, same story. And that's when another thought hit me. Maybe classic rock bands are becoming the CD burner. Now, hear me out. The music isn't worse. The musicians aren't worse. The audience is changing. Every weekend, I sit behind a mixer and watch people. Most people think a sound man watches meters and faders. The longer I do it, the more I realize I'm watching people. And over the years, I've noticed something. The crowd gets older. The musicians get older. The venues change. The world keeps moving forward. The same thing happened to big bands. The same thing happened to swing music. The same thing happened to vaudeville. Not because they failed, but because time moved on. The music didn't fail, the world changed. Different actors, different technology, same story. And now here comes artificial intelligence. Some people are excited, some people are worried, some people think it's going to change everything, and maybe it will. But we've seen this movie before. Computers were going to destroy jobs. The internet was going to destroy society. Digital recording was going to destroy music. And cell phones were going to destroy communication. We've heard this all before. Some things got worse, some things got better. Most things simply changed. Because that's what technology does, it changes things. And maybe that's why AI doesn't feel completely new. Not because we don't know what's coming, but because we've lived through enough change to know that the world keeps moving. Maybe that's the real Gen X advantage. Not that we're smarter, not that we're tougher. We've simply had more practice adapting. For years, people admired the oak tree strong, solid, unmoving. But when a really big storm comes through, sometimes the oak breaks. The willow does something different. The willow bends. The willow adapts. And when the storm passes, it's still standing. Maybe that's the lesson. The people who survive change aren't always the strongest. They're usually the most adaptable. And if there's one thing Gen X has practiced our entire lives, it's adaptation. We grew up one way, the world changed. We adapted. Then it changed again. We adapted again. And now here comes AI. Another change, another rebuild, just like before. I learned recording in the late 1980s. I worked in electronics, telecommunications, and live sound. And now I'm making YouTube videos with my cell phone. If you had told 20-year-old me that one day I'd be talking to people all over the world through a platform on a computer, I wouldn't have believed you. Yet here we are. Maybe that's why that old CD burner caught my attention. I wasn't looking at a machine, I was looking at a reminder. A reminder that every generation thinks that its technology is permanent. Every generation thinks the world they know is the world that will always exist. And every generation is wrong. The machine didn't fail, the musicians didn't fail, and the technology didn't fail. Time simply moved forward. The oak is impressive. The willow survives. Maybe that's the real Gen X story. Different actors, different technology, same story. And if every wave of change creates new opportunities and new problems, then one of the biggest waves happening right now is the race to build data centers. And that's what we'll talk about next time.